Hello, everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you can get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is Jevic Muteba, who is a senior business development manager at Blavity. Jevic, welcome to the show.
Man, thank you for having me, Paul. Appreciate you and Greg for having me on. Excited.
Ah, it's an honor to have you on the show. Have an honor to be on the show. And I know we had some brief words prior to the obviously the interview, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the French and the English. I want to know a little bit more about that. But before we actually dive into all those things, I just really want to kind of get a little bit more of an understanding of where you're from, a little bit of your cultural background, and currently where you are right now.
Absolutely. So I was actually born in Zaire, now named the Democratic Republic of Congo. If folks aren't familiar with the Congo or Zaire, think the Rumble in the Jungle. So the big Ali fight was there. And I know everyone's
Yep.
familiar with Black Panther. It's a real Wakanda out there. So cobalt and like natural resources are really big in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So that's where I was born. Then we migrated to Montreal, Canada, before being raised in Boston, Massachusetts, more specifically Revere, Massachusetts. That's where I went to grade school, high school, went to university at Suffolk University, right downtown in Boston. Currently been in Atlanta since the pandemic. So one of those folks went from the north to the south, causing prices to go crazy down over
Hmm.
here in Atlanta. But more specifically, Gwinnett, Georgia there. So I've been here, yeah, since June 2020.
Okay, so you transferred in when the pandemic was going on.
Absolutely. And it's like, speaking about cultures, like coming from Boston to Atlanta, especially during the pandemic, was completely different, like vibe, energy, like very different world.
So talk to me about a little bit more backtrack. So that's like you probably named like five places in transition.
Absolutely.
That seems like a lot of transition, and you did all of this from early childhood. When did you first leave and come to? You said Canada was the first stop, right?
Yeah, Canada's first stop. Actually got two older sisters and one more brother, and then one stepbrother and one stepsister. But we always make fun of my little my little brother because he was actually born in Montreal, so he was the only one actually not born in the
Oh,
Congo. So every time we make that visit, we always like, "Hey, we're back in your country," going over there. So I was there until I was like three, four, but I started grade school and everything in Massachusetts.
mhm.
So my whole academic career was in North America,
Mm.
specifically in Massachusetts.
I can imagine just that cultural difference coming from where you're coming from, going to the states and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Like what we talked about early on, like French was my first language. That's what we spoke at home, everything like that. Honestly, first grade, I almost repeated like first grade, like I just couldn't speak English yet. So that was something my mom actually went to the school and was like, hey, he's just not dumb. He just like needs time to learn English. Are there, shout out to Black moms. I went to school. And then honestly, that moment we just started speaking like English in the household. It was like, hey, no
Okay.
French, we got to learn English. Going through, went to summer school in first grade, just because like, hey, just really couldn't speak English yet. Everything too. So now I get made fun of by my cousins because I kind of lost my accent. Everyone's like, hey, like where's your French accent? You pronounce your R's. You don't have that Boston accent, you even park the car.
Oh
So
yeah, because Boston got their own thing.
yeah, Boston got their own thing. So, but speaking on the phones and being in partnerships, being in sales, I try to speak, correct. So what people would say,
Mm. And I know
proper.
that's always a hard thing sometimes, but I get you. I get you. Now that talk to me about like, you know, if you had to rank three best things about your culture, what would you say?
Yeah, if you know anything about the Congo, definitely music, right? So that's always big. And I think that's always played a big part of my life, just even like studying or like being an athlete, like pregame. So like music is always like big for me. And I think just like my culture, like my household more specifically, I think education is just always been big. Like all my
Okay.
siblings went to university. So like after high school for me, it was just like the natural step, right? It's just like, hey, you're going to school, like going for it was just like what school you're going to, right? So it wasn't anything. Our parents really just always stressed like education. So that was really big. And then not for me specifically, but actually all my aunts are in healthcare. My mom's actually an MP. I have a couple aunts that
Okay.
are aunts. My sister's a nurse. So like I think a lot of like African households, especially Congolese like culture, like healthcare is like really important there. Being that space didn't work out for me. I chose more like the business route
Okay, cool,
there, but
cool.
I think those are three important things in my culture and household.
Okay. I like how you started off with music first.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's music. Music is like a language that's felt around the world. And I share a brief story. I mean I didn't get to visit the Congos, but I was in Tanzania, in Angola. But I do recall, sad to say, when I was on that flight flying, I forgot where we were going, Angola or someplace. We were on tour at the time, and we looked to the left of us, and I thought it was thunder, right? And they were
Yeah.
like, "Nah, we're flying over the Congo right now, and it's a war going on." And I was like, "Wait, hold on." What's going on over here? I really, because we were on the flight and then we hit boom, boom, the rattling, and I was like, okay, we're just hurricane, thunderstorm or something, but no. So I could only imagine, that just the history coming from there and leaving there, going to Boston and traveling all around, and then obviously landing in Atlanta, like keeping that with you at all times. So I'm glad that you kept music and education and all those things with you along that journey, because sometimes you could lose it.
Absolutely. Like, like my French and my French accent. So some things you can definitely lose, but trying to get it back.
Now, out of curiosity, like how does growing up in like an immigrant household prepare you for like the educational path that you were going to take?
Yeah. So I think it's just like one, I think the first thing is like it's like has to happen, right? Like being in that household, it's like not you're not going to take like a year off on your journey, anything like that. Like, hey, you have to do it. I think that's one, and then I think two is just like knowing, understand. Like my pops always said, like, hey, you got to work twice as hard as everyone in sports, in school. Like that's just what you're gonna have to do. You're gonna be probably look at a little differently, everything like that. But just like don't let that be an excuse. So I think that's another big thing. Like no excuses, right? One thing my mom always always said to me, like if I ever had a bad grade, especially in the English class, was like, hey,
Oh,
like what are you doing in English? Like I don't even speak English and like I'm doing good. I got an A in my class. So like, why aren't you getting an A in this class? So that's always been something my mom's always said to me and going through, but like education was really big.
mhm. Now with the education, I know that you said a lot of the family members are in the medical field.
Yes, correct.
So I could only imagine the stress you might have caused in this family, the uproar, when you were like, "Look, I'm gonna switch out, and I'm not gonna follow the path that everyone's following." And I know sometimes it's a very hard thing, especially when you come from that immigrant household, being different from the rest, right?
Hmm.
When everyone's following the same path, because it seems to make more sense for the family,
Hmm.
right? Everyone goes to the same school. We all graduate. We all get into the same type of jobs. We all make enough money to support the family and the movement and the community. But like, talk to us about some of the challenges you face, when picking that career path.
Yeah, for me, just like it was just natural, right? So like I've always been like honestly like a tech junkie. So like even in high school, I worked at like Radio Shack, I worked at Best Buy. I always going through so like in electronics and like working my way, like that's always been me. Like I bought my own sneakers for ball, like anything like that.
Okay.
Like I didn't have no allowance, so it's like whatever I can do on the side on top of my studies there. And then I definitely got to give a shout out to my older sister because she actually studied business first. Like she's a VP in an agency. So she's always had the business mind and wasn't really into like healthcare. It wasn't really no stress, I would say, from like, hey, why aren't you choosing this traditional path like healthcare? But still to this day, my mom would be like, hey, here's a healthcare opportunity going for it. I was like, hey, mom, like that's just not what I do, right?
Nah, nah, it
But
is.
I think still some of them just don't get it, right? Or like even my sister who's in healthcare when we talk business, she's like, I just don't get this, right? And some of the things that I do is like, hey, why are you leaving this company to go to this company? Like, you got to stay here for 10 years plus and then move around. The business world and healthcare world is completely different, right? Like
True.
LinkedIn, my mom just got LinkedIn during COVID. She goes, wow, like, I didn't even know what this was before. I was like, yeah, like, mom, like, this is what we got to do. Or like, I've been educating like some of my family members on 401ks. Like, that's something like they didn't
Yeah.
know about. I was like, hey, you got to do that. Your company matches. Like, this is how
That's
you retire early.
mm, and I think that's something very important that you're hitting on right there. Like you're not on obviously us as coming from an immigrant household, providing diversity to the organizations we're going to, but we also want to provide that diversity back home as well.
Mhm.
We want to be able to diversify our mind, right? And how we, because obviously sometimes our family members, and there's nothing against that, they didn't have the education. They wouldn't know about a 401k, or they wouldn't know about compound interest, right? But someone within business will know about that. The same way as a doctor might say, or someone who's a nurse might say, well, you know what, you got to do this in order to get better, or a physical therapist, right? So
Mhm.
provided, even though it might have caused a little bit of ripple within the family, it obviously did help out in the long run. And
Yeah.
because you were good at it, right? It obviously helped contribute to the success of the family. So kudos to you for doing that, because it is very hard to do that. Did your family members did you have any family members or any mentors to give you like somewhat of a blueprint while you were doing this?
Not really, to be honest. I think that's something just our community, we got to do more like conversations like this, like what you and Greg are doing is absolutely. But like, no, I think it's just being in school and listening and honestly being in good organizations I've been in and the different mentors there and just picking up when I'm in the room, just like, all right, really like listening, picking up. I worked before this job, like predominantly mostly like white organizations going through there. And it was like honestly a really good like learning ability like there, like 401k, like what to do there. And like picked up a couple of mentors there. But I think some reasons why like wasn't maybe the greatest mentors because just some of the hardships that we face that you'll understand like off rip for me and you just talking,
Mm-hmm,
we understand some things that they
mm-hmm.
wouldn't understand, right? But they taught me a lot of things like, hey, this is what you should do. And this is like, hey, when you start your job, X, Y, and Z, right? So I definitely picked up mentors that way with in regards to my professional journey.
Okay. Now, when you look back at it all, right? We were talking about just your career. We're gonna dive a little bit more into it, but just give me a little understanding of like what does it mean to be African?
Yeah, I mean, we got the flavor, right? The melon, the flavor, it's just the swag is just like automatic and like more African Congolese. Like you'll just know, like I want to get more into that because I think just the Congolese you'll just know, right? So we're known as just like the music, the dance, the fashion, like that's always like big in
True,
our
true.
community. It's just like this is the flavor, to be honest, to be Congolese. Like you'll just know, like, that's one
I
of
mean,
those
it
Congolese
sounds
songs.
fly already, Congolese. That sounds like a clothing line. You got that
Bad,
new Congolese?
bad.
That's what
So
it
I just
sounds like.
yeah, I
I,
think
I,
it's
I didn't
like
get it yet. I didn't get it yet. I get it for Christmas. Congolese.
I just think flavor, swag is just like it's just already in the moon. People already know.
And like, who are some of your like role models, people who inspired you along your journey? I know obviously the family had helped in some way, shape, or form, but like outside of the family, like who helped shape your vision?
Yeah, I definitely always give a shout out to this person. I finally had a chance to give him his flowers not too long ago, but one of my boys, Jared, was probably the second organization I worked for. Actually the first company like straight out of school, I worked for this insurance startup. Never would work for insurance ever. I said that in my life, but the recruiter, the staffing agency I use, which I definitely appreciate staffing agencies. They're like, hey, I know the vibe you're looking for. You're looking for like a young company. You want to make a mark. You don't want to be like a number. You want like, to have fun at work and work hard. She's like, just like go into the office and like check it out. I went to the office, great location. It was right downtown. People were like throwing footballs in the office, but people were working hard too as well. And it was like, it was competitive and it was still like a team environment. And I was like, hey, like I kind of rock with this. Majority white folks, but I had a black manager who was great, like Omar, and then like there's another like just black sales rep on the floor, and he was doing really well. He was getting shout outs like before we start the day, like he would always get shout outs. I was like, yo, this dude's cool. Honestly, probably never talked to him like for real, like when we worked together. But then like I never wanted to be insurance, right? But I wanted to be in startups. He went over to this different startup and it was like more like working on the advertising side. And I was like, hey, this is what I want to do. And honestly, I left that company and just followed him there. So
Okay.
definitely want to give him a shout out. And then like he really helped me out because when I went to that company, that's when I actually got my first ever management position. First
Mm.
time I ever made six figures. So it's like definitely literally just followed him. Followed another black person on the floor. He went over there. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna follow this guy. He seems like he knows what he's doing.
Mhm. And before I dive into that next question, right now, I'm glad you were talking about that, but you also said something which is a major accomplishment. for anyone coming from an immigrant household. Like obviously, one of the major reasons why our grandparents and parents leave where they're from to come here, migrate here, is because of the opportunity and because of the
Mhm.
financial gains and knowledge that we could get from our school, right? Our scholastics. You had mentioned about that was the first time you hit six figures,
Absolutely.
right? And I don't want to just I don't want to harp on it too much, but I just want to kind of say first off, that must have been a massive accomplishment for yourself, obviously, but also for the family as well, because the work that they did to get you here and to keep you safe and to keep you into school and keep you motivated, it ended up to you financially making those gains that they were always hoping and dreaming of. So how did that feel to you?
No, I felt great. It was a lot of hard work, to be honest, and just like honestly, I think I gave myself kudos and a pat on the back after the fact because like that first job, it was like, hey, like it was like honestly $10 an hour going through probably the end of the year made 40. And even that first job, like the base salary was only like 45 and everything was through like commissions and partnerships. And then like looking at a check at the end of the year, it's like, damn, I made 126. But like a year ago, I was like happy to make 50. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, I'm under 25 right now. There's like nothing
Yeah,
to go but
yeah,
up, right? And I think it was more of establishment because like folks too as well, like because it was in sales and advertising. Some folks like, hey, I would never be in sales, I would never do advertising. But I was like, hey, my clients, well, I just consult for them. I speak to them like I'm speaking to you. And just like I go over everything like that. So it's definitely I appreciate the work that I'm doing. It was like, all right, you're on the path, like you're good. And just like, where else can we go from here? Let's keep on going now.
kudos, kudos, congratulations on that.
Appreciate it.
Now talk to me about the athletic background. Let's talk about college, right? Let's talk about how you had to juggle the two, right? You had to juggle, you know, the challenges you face, college, playing basketball, to starting to work, the real life, everything is starting to kick in. So like talk about that transition.
Yeah, honestly, that first year was really tough. The first year, like on campus, like first, like I was commuting like Suffolk from Revere, like not far. Like we took the blue line. I was 20 minutes in, I was commuting, and Suffolk's really not like a campus. It's like right downtown the city. So you're right there in a financial district with like the adults, right? So it's really not that campus. You guys all by yourself there. That first year was like really tough. I still remember in an econ class, I mean, one of my buddies was like, "Yo, why are we here? Like, let's go to Hawaii. University of Hawaii is like cheaper." And I was legitimately about to transfer to University of Hawaii, because how much cheaper it was until we started like the price of milk. That's really why we didn't go. The price of
Oh,
milk at that
oh,
time in 2008. Guess how much the price of milk was?
you
Gallon of
do
milk.
how much what gallon of quart? What we talking about?
Gallon of
Like
milk
give it like 350.
was like $9.
No.
Gallon of milk in Hawaii. So we saw that and we're like, oh, we're gonna get killed out here. That's why, because everything's exported in Hawaii. So that's how it's like, oh, we
Oh,
gotta
we
stay
not
here.
we
Yeah,
not.
we can't go. Yeah.
I'm canceling
So
my honeymoon when it comes up.
so that's why we didn't go out there. And then like I think my first practice and like meeting the team, I think that's when I really got some relationship meeting the team. I was on campus and folks were like, great. And then coach like sent out a practice schedule. I was like, yo, coach, I can't do this. Oh, I think I was the only, maybe the one other black person on the team, but I was like, I was working my way for school. So I was like, hey, like this practice schedule, like I gotta work, like I'm paying my own bills, like this just can't go. So I actually wasn't on the team for a semester. Coach called me up in like December. Team started like 0-4, 0-5. He was like, hey, like, you still interested in basketball? I was like, absolutely. But I was like, hey, I got to work. He's like, whenever you got to work, you don't have to go to practice. So definitely shout out to that coach and like, understanding like my situation was a lot different than other folks like on the team. Like, and it was a D3
That's
school
the
too as
support.
well.
That's
Yeah, that's
support.
the support we needed. But honestly, I did better academics wise always like during basketball season just because the limited time I had was like, hey, this time you got to do your studies. Like from this time, or it just won't get done. So I can have practice and be like clear my mind for that. So honestly, the balance was, I think for most athletes, it's like we do better like during season with academics just because we know like here's our schedule. And I think
Yeah,
that's why
yeah,
athletes are so like they're so used to having a schedule and it's like this is the time you have to get yourself done. Like
mm,
after season when you have all the time in the world, that's when like trouble happens sometimes. It's
yeah,
like you kind of
yeah,
lose focus or trying to chill, but like during the season and like just having something on this calendar, honestly, I was always do better, just being more busy.
Hmm. Hmm. Now, your experience with the NCAA, being a student athlete, how did that shape your approach in that, like those high pressure sales and business environments? Because I know with the NCAA, I can only imagine some of those games.
Absolutely. But I think a lot of like organizations, which I noticed, especially the startup world, they literally say like sometimes an application, like we're looking for athletes. And I think the reason why they're looking for athletes is like, number one, you could be competitive like with your peers, but you got to be a teammate for your peers too as well, right? So
True.
like someone like me, and my boy, we're going for the same spot. We're going to compete, but I'm going to give him all the tips in the world to get better to help the team off overall. And he's going to do the
True.
same thing, vice versa. Right. So it's kind of that way in sales like, hey, I'm competing with every one of my teammates. I think I'm better than every one of them. But if there's like, hey, a client that comes out to me and they need help to assist, I'm going to throw that lob to them. I'm going to throw that dime, that pass, because it's just going to overall help the team. Right. The
Hmm.
better the team is, the better we all look overall. Right. So like no one looks good on a bad team, period. So if the
Hmm.
team looks good, you're going to look a lot better. So I think that's one way it's really definitely helped out. That competitiveness and the teamwork, and it's a tough balance to have, but athletes are just used to it their whole life. That's what
Hmm.
we've been
Hmm.
doing.
Some of the guests that have come on previously had mentioned the same thing about how some of their businesses, the companies that they joined, organizations, they were looking for athletes, right? And, obviously everyone's a great player potentially, right? But when you have a team working together, as we can see, like within the Olympics, I know we talked about it briefly, but watching that team, the USA team, come back from that uh, and winning,
Basically.
it just goes to show what that athleticism is and that camaraderie. Like even though one person, we're both going for the same spot. Everybody wants MVP,
Mhm.
but we're all going to work together. And if you get it, it's cool, right? Because you deserve it, right? So I'm glad that you could use your competitiveness and your understanding of athletics and apply that to other aspects of your life. Sometimes people do certain things and they forget that they can apply it somewhere else because it is a transferable skill.
Absolutely. So I think too, like, I don't know if we're gonna get into this, but like I'm trying to honestly retire early. My mom always makes fun of me, and my aunt was like, "What? You're trying?" I'm trying to retire by 40, 45. But after like the tech career and the sales career and like speaking these sessions, like I want to coach and I want to really focus on that aspect because I wish like a coach had in my mind was like, hey, like not everyone's gonna be LeBron James, right? Like take your career as further as can get you, but just realize, especially if you're trying to get in this tech world or these like very competitive firms, like they're looking for you. So
Yeah.
keeping like, so I want to get that in the mind for folks a lot earlier. Like honestly, it didn't hit me till after school. It's like, hey, all these job applications, they're saying like they're looking for athletes. Like I wish that was in my mind in high school or at least in college.
And it's like you're like, oh, sign me up.
Yeah.
Sign you up. Throughout your career, like what do you think was the biggest challenge for first generation immigrants, professionals that they face in corporate America?
Wow, great question. I think the first challenge I have is just like kind of going against the grain from what your parents have taught you your whole life, right? So our parents are all about like stability and being with an organization, but like the average tech role, like it's what, 3 years? And like
Mhm.
perfect example for me, that first company I made 6 figures, right? Like I left there, left that company, went to a few different companies, came back within like 5 years, and my salary was 3x than when I first started there. So sometimes you actually have to leave the company to go back to make more. And that's something just like doesn't make sense much. It was like just stay this. But if I stayed at that company forever, I definitely would have not made as much money as I did. Right.
Okay.
So that's like something as an immigrant, it's just like because your parents tell you, like, hey, you're good, you're stable, like through there, just stay there. And then I've left companies just because I haven't been happy before, right? And my mom just like still to this day doesn't get it. It's just like, oh, like I'm not happy here. Let me try my schedule. Like I'm literally just not happy. Like I'm gonna go. And that's something just like being an adjustment, I think, from her. And adjustment for me is just like, hey, if you're not happy somewhere, like leave.
Yeah.
One of my CEOs always said it like, hey, like if you're not happy here, and he wasn't being an asshole, like you should leave. Like, because I'm happy every day coming to work and I want happy employees. And that's honestly
It
something I
makes a
appreciate.
difference.
Makes a huge difference. And that's
Makes a
something I
big
always
difference.
preach to my team is like, hey, like you're not happy. Like I love my job. Like I wake up and like I have great clients. Like when I see them in person, it's phenomenal. But it's like, if you're not happy, you should go. Like life is way too short, especially when we're working in the office. Like you're seeing more of these folks in your family. Like, so if you're not happy here, you should go. So I think that was something huge adjustment being an immigrant and being what my parents taught me, just like, hey,
Mhm.
just stick it out. Just rough
And
it out here.
being, first generation or second generation, like it is hard to leave when you're not happy, because you know how hard it took for our
To
family
get
members
in.
to get there, but then also it's engraved in us stability. It's engraved in us, you need to do better. It's engraved in us that we need to set a new standard, right? So there's a lot of pressure that comes with being a first or second generation immigrant, where it's like, oh my gosh, like what do I do, right? I have an opportunity, but I'm not happy. And sometimes our previous guests had talked about like, they depression, anxiety, and all these things kick in because that amount of pressure and that workload as well too. Especially when you don't like what you do, it feels like work,
Mm-hmm.
right? But again, you found something that you love doing, and you continue to move through it. Obviously, you got to do a little convincing in the beginning, but it all worked out.
Yes,
It all
sir.
worked out. Speak about your current role at Blavity. Like, what is like
Yeah.
one of the proudest accomplishments you've achieved over there?
Honestly, just being here has been it was a breath of fresh air. I think the first like week, some folks were like, hey, how's it working at Blavity, working for a black owned organization, black woman owned organization? I was like, the perfect thing I would always tell people is like, I've never heard the word dope used in a corporate setting. Like people are like, hey, oh, dope idea. And like we're admitting like I can just be me, right? So just like that's just been super refreshing for me. And I think my proudest moment has been like honestly working these huge, large organizations that need my help, right? Like Google's coming to me, Capital One's coming
Mm,
to me because of my expertise of like how to find Black talent, how to retain that Black talent, how can we be authentic in speaking to this community, right? Like I think that's been like super dope. Working with some government agencies, I think too as well, and just being I think as candid as possible, I think it is like I think it's my proudest achievement. Like just like I'll go to meetings like this. I'll have my fitted on, I still have my polo, but just like being as comfortable knowing I'm the expert like in this space and they're coming to
mm.
me for a
You
reason,
earned
right?
it. You
Hmm.
earned it. You earned it. That is an honor. There was a moment in time where you probably would never do that.
Oh, absolutely not.
Or
Like
first off, our family members would say, "Don't even do it. You better wear the shirt, the tie. Your
mm,
shoes better be shined. You better have a nice belt on and a good watch, right? Because that's what they were taught to kind
mhm.
of fit in and blend in. But the way we blend in currently right now is through our work ethic and what we actually provide, right? It's like our work ethic speaks for itself. So
Exactly.
yeah, of course, you might wear the fitted, you might wear a polo or something and be a little bit more relaxed than the next person, but it doesn't mean that the work ethic and your experience does not match or surpass. And it's beautiful to know that uh, we are now at a place like that. A lot of the guests had spoken about that. Like, you know what? I feel comfortable speaking my native language in the office or eating the certain types of food that I used to eat, because not only people respect it because it's different, but it's also I'm in a leadership position where I can actually open the eyes of so many other people.
Absolutely.
It's
I
like you
love
said,
that.
the word dope, just simple.
Dope.
Dope.
And just
Someone look
like
at the office and be like, what? And then you're like, it's just cool. It's a good thing.
uh, and I think something small for me, actually, one of my associates called me out on it on a different podcast, a different webinar I was on, was like, I go by my name now. I go by Jevic. Like before, like I was like dealing with all these white people. I was like, hey, like butchering my name. I was like, yo, just call me Jay. And like honestly, I hate like going by Jay. Not my
Jay,
name
that's a
at
whole that's
all.
a whole switch up.
The whole switch up. Veek, I don't mind. Some people call me Veek. I'm like,
Okay,
hey,
okay, all
like
right.
Veek's cool,
Jay,
but
this
it's like I used to go by Jay, but that's something here. Like nowhere it says Jay. Like I go by my name, Javiq, and everyone says my name correctly. So that's been like a huge shift. And like sounds crazy, one little small thing, but that's just been like I can actually go by my name here. It's like Javiq. People know how to say it. We're good.
it's a fly name too.
Appreciate it.
Like outside of your career, I know you found your own company. Could you talk a little bit more about that and tell us about your company, the mission, and like how you're working with like underrepresented individuals
Yeah,
backgrounds
pass the baton
exactly?
up, Patron. I know we talked a little about the music going through, but it's actually Jay-Z is one of my favorite artists of all time. I'm
You
a
say
huge Drake
Jay
fan.
Z?
Jay-Z, of
Oh,
course.
Hova.
Oh, Hova,
Okay,
of course. Huge Drake fan. Everyone knows me.
okay.
OVO XO. Got the
I mean,
same.
Canada is in your blood too. You know what I'm saying? So I'll let you ride on that.
Kid is my blood, but one of my favorite actually rappers is actually J. Cole. And the song Beautiful.
Oh,
Yeah, Cole is just like
Cole, he's lethal,
lethal.
underrated sometimes.
Underrated. But in Beautiful Bliss, that song, he's like, hey, I thought Hove passed the baton, but he just passed the Patron. And then that was like the play of that song. And I think it just speaks to just like our community, right? There's just like a lot of like drinking buddies and stuff like that you'll have a drink with, but like they're not passing that knowledge down. So that's like came over. That's how the purposes of the name like came to fruition there. And then yeah, it's just like, and I didn't realize how strong honestly my network was with just like women in like leadership that I've had the pleasure of working with, and black males in the space that are killing it. Just interviewing them and letting them know like how they got there to that space there, and like what challenges that they face, and like what they're trying to do going forward. But yeah, it's from that song, Beautiful Bliss. Shout out to one of my producers, Greg Lee, who I actually worked with at Best Buy like 10, 15 years ago. Crazy how like we're staying in contact now. But yeah, that's we're doing that. And like right now, currently working with ATL 243, a little startup just started less than a year. And it's really connecting the Congolese community in Atlanta. For Congo, I would say Atlanta, Boston, Dallas, Utah, those are pretty like strong communities for Congolese to be in there. So I'm helping that community, helping honestly the younger generation connect with each other. Because I think one thing our parents did really well, they had their gathering and their like community was like knit, but it was like, hey, it's time to really pass that torch, right? That we're seeing in business too as well. All these boomers going to be out, and it's going to be our generation kind of taking
Mm,
over. So that's kind of like that for so ATL 243 helping them out too as well. And I'm the leadership team there.
okay, you out here putting in work.
Hey, trying, man. Hey,
You out here
we
put.
just
I
trying to
yeah.
retire early, so like I'm trying to
I
put in this work right now.
you might have to invite the whole Zaka crew to the retirement party.
Hey, time party's gonna be late. We're always gonna be like I always tell them we're always gonna be working, but I was like,
True,
I'm
true.
always gonna be working, right? Because I already got like I'm gonna be a basketball coach. I'm gonna do like my Airbnbs. Already got one with my mom, but I was just like actually from 9 to 5.
Yeah. I get you. I
Oh,
get you. It's not gonna be like the constant. We gotta get up, gotta go, gotta
ex-
go. It's like you know what?
exactly,
I could get up, but today I don't want to. I can just
ex-
relax.
exactly.
That is still retirement. Our parents and our grandparents thought retirement was like actually like coming to a complete stop.
Hmm.
It's funny you say talking about that because back then it was like you hit 65, 70,
You're done.
that's it. You could sit at home. You may pick up a part-time job, but our retirement in our eyes is like, I just want to slow down. That's it. I don't want to stop. I just want to slow down.
Just want to slow
Right.
down.
So I'm definitely looking forward to that invite.
Of course.
You know what I'm saying? I might have to pull up to the ATL or wherever you go on your retirement party. Did when you talk about being and I'm a student athlete back in the days as well, so I ran D1 track and field. So it's good to to have athletes and sharing that common denominator, especially during a special time such as the Olympics. So
Hmm.
kudos to our connection right now. And
Yes, sir.
but I wanted to just kind of ask you that question, like as a former student athlete, who played basketball. I know there's a particular quote from Kobe Bryant. Shout out to the one and only Kobe. Rest in peace to the young man. Um, that talks about like leadership, management. Like how is this quote utilized in your everyday, especially in like challenging times?
Yeah, especially in town. I mean, I think one in the leadership aspect, you're not always going to be, you got to be learn how to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? And not everyone's going to like you. And especially like managing, like I've managed a team of 11 before, like at Wayfair. And then some of those folks, like literally they would graduate school on Saturday and work for me on Monday, right? So like completely different like leadership style I would have to have with them. And as well, not even just like learning the business, they got to learn to be a professional, right? And learn to like, hey, this is what we do now, like 9 to 5. And I think I've just learned just like, honestly, not everyone's gonna like it going through there. But for me, and especially that situation, I actually took over. Number one, I was the first manager from the outside. So meaning all the other managers actually grew up in organizations. They were like BDRs, AEs, and then become managers.
Okay.
I was the first one to come there like straight to management. Only black manager in the sales floor too as well, going through there. So right, different eyes on you, right? And I was taking over a team that actually the previous manager was going on maternity leave, which honestly was the best situation here for me. Because while she was there, like we were like both managers, and I kind of saw how she taught the team and like her style. And she was like, I don't think honestly that experience would have worked so smoothly if it wasn't for her grace. And she was like so beneficial and so like helpful. And I can understand, especially I've been in situations that someone like in her position wouldn't have been that way. It would have been like, I
Sure.
ain't gonna tell you nothing. Like, cause this is my position when I get back, right? So shout out for her. But like I think the first thing I did was like, hey, I can't be her. I can't be Leah, right? She's great.
Yeah.
She grew up in the organization. She knows the systems. Like I don't know this stuff. I don't know furniture. Like that's how I learned furniture. I don't know this, but I know how to do partnerships and how to speak to people and how to strategize. And like that is gonna be my asset and like what I can bring to the team. I know competition. So I think that like being comfortable like, hey, I'm not gonna be this person. I'm not gonna follow this path. And I think during even the interview, some of the folks they said like, hey, like when you're in the manager, they just, follow our path. Let's go what we're doing and you're gonna be fine. I was like, absolutely. I said, absolutely not. Like this
Mm.
is my way, this is what we're doing. I had competitions every week. One thing, and I think I wasn't scared of going against leadership. So one thing, like my boss there was like my one-on-ones were completely different than everyone else one-on-one. I was like, one-on-ones is for my team, right? For my associates. So if you walk in the room, you would think they're the managers. I was like, y'all make the agenda, y'all do the whiteboard. You tell me how I can be a resource for you,
Sure.
and it would help their leadership skills. So like my director, she's like, hey, like I hear your one-on-ones, they're a little different. You're not following a path. And she's like, I want you to switch it up. I was like, yeah. I kept on doing me. I was like, hey, I invite you to my one-on-ones and see it in style, like you're hearing it from the bushes. Like, come in, I invite you, and then you tell me if I'm doing something wrong. She came in, she's like, oh, I absolutely love this. Like, thank you. So I think like being comfortable there, uncomfortable, right? It was like, hey, going
Yeah.
against my boss, I'm the new person. I'm just like, I don't
That's
care.
it.
Like,
That's
we're
it.
gonna do it my way. We're gonna go through here. So yeah, I would get that from Kobe. Is like, I think Kobe had an interview. Like, if somebody has something in their teeth, right? Some people are scared to like, hey, you got something in your teeth, Paul. Like, just scared to say it for that uncomfortable moment. But now in my career, just like I'm just not scared anymore, right? To go against some bushes there.
But they say closed mouths don't get fed, and I know Hova believes in that.
Hey, oh, the
You know what I'm
rock.
saying? Hey, shit. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely know where you're coming from with that. Yeah, it's a hard thing, especially when you're in an environment where they teach you not to speak up, right? We were taught not to speak up, and if we did
Mhm,
speak up, it was only for a brief second.
mhm.
You couldn't really have an essay to describe how you truly felt. It was like, I just don't like this. Okay.
Yep.
And our parents and our grandparents would have an essay on why this is how it's got to be. Right. But for us, it was just like, I guess this is it. Right. So again, it's like just the constant battle, trying to pull away from what we do know and creating something new for ourselves. But when we share stories like this and we have these intimate conversations, it reminds us of our culture, where we come from, and how much growth we have taken, right? And how we're going to help future generations do the same exact thing, because we now are those individuals. We are our parents, we are our grandparents, we're other individuals, whether if they're related to us or not, are going to be following in our footsteps. And that brings me to the next question that I have for you is like, any last words for, any immigrant professional aspiring to succeed in this competitive industry like tech or media, sales? I know you have a background in that. Any advice that you would give to them?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think you got to be. I think I read it somewhere, and I'm probably not going to paraphrase it all completely, but you got to be so confident in yourself. It kind of sounds delusional, like sometimes that space, right? Because I think we all have an imposter syndrome of like, hey, am I good enough? Am I this and that like that? But like, nah, you got to go completely the other way. You got to be so confident in yourself. It's like people look at you crazy, right? Like, I think that's the way you got to be in this environment. If you carry yourself that way, and especially in this competitive environment, like folks are gonna believe it or think you're crazy, but number one, you're
Yeah,
gonna stick out. One way or the
yeah.
other, you're gonna stick out, right? For better,
I'm
for
gonna work.
worse. And it's being in advertising, what every publicity is good publicity. Like you just be out there, but be so confident in yourself. It sounds illusional. Like me, it's like I keep on saying everywhere I'm going, like, hey, I'm gonna retire by 40, and people just look at me crazy. Like, what? Like I'm that confident that like people think I'm delusional in that. Like you
Nah,
gotta be,
you
right?
gotta be,
Oh,
you
over to
gotta
like,
be.
oh, like I think so, like I hope so. Like no, like I'm retiring by 40. Like that's what it is. So that's my advice to people. Like be so confident. Some folks just think you're delusional and just you're gonna stick out.
Okay, well, Shafiq, thank you so much for just being present and expressing to us, your journey, your story. Thank you so much for sharing that athletic background and how important it is to, when it comes to your culture or when it comes to your athletic background, let those things kind of shine as well too when applying for those jobs or building your own business.
Mhm.
You've definitely juggled a lot of things, moved around a lot, but as you can see, you have dreams and aspirations of retiring at the age of 45. So that goes to show you that no matter the struggle, no matter the distance, no matter the obstacles that are coming your way, you're still staying true to what you got to do. And it's beautiful. And it was an honor to actually have this conversation with you. Thank you so much for the inspiration and just sharing on our platform.
Likewise, Pros, appreciate you, Greg, and y'all continue this. This is dope. The setting y'all's have. I listened to some of the sessions you guys had now. This is stuff that we need to continue doing in our community for sure.
Yeah, no, it's been a long time coming. Greg and the whole entire team have been working, endless hours to make sure this platform reaches the level of where it needs to be. The community, like everyone says, everyone enjoys it. We're looking to having individuals like you constantly, keep coming back and sharing and also sharing more information with our community. So thank you again.
Yes, sir.
And I just want to let our listeners know if you want to hear more inspirational stories like Javi, please check us out on ZakaConnect.com. Follow our social at Zaka Connect and follow our feed Zaka wherever you listen to your podcasts.